So when you're picking cardio routines, you might hear a lot of conflicting stuff on somebody told me I need to do super low intensity cardio because that helps to preserve my muscle. And then you have people on the complete opposite end of the spectrum who are saying high intensity exercise is something that's going to boost growth hormone. It's going to boost all your anabolic. Anabolic means growth, by the way. All your anabolic hormones, which will help you to grow muscle and be the biggest, strongest version of yourself that you can be. So which one is it? All right, let's break this down a little bit. So low intensity cardio is definitely easier to adhere to. It's easier to adhere to because it's not as hard to do. And the harder a form of exercise is for an individual, the less likely that they will actually do that exercise long term. So that's something to consider when you want to know, should I do low intensity versus high intensity? If you're somebody who doesn't get into the gym very easily, doesn't stick to workout programs long term, low intensity could be a better option for that reason. Another reason I really like doing lower intensity forms of cardiovascular exercise is because that you can multitask for the most part during these things. So what do I mean by multitasking? I mean looking up texts from friends. I mean watching YouTube videos or Netflix shows. I mean maybe doing some social media posts for my channel here, right? Forms of low impact exercise like walking, stationary biking, elliptical, stairmaster. These are all forms of cardio that I can multitask and do all of those things while I'm doing some cardio. So if you're somebody who's strapped for time and you think I don't have time to do all these different things I need to do, or you're just bored of doing cardio, you can easily multitask and do some different things with it, like the ones I just kind of mentioned and demonstrated. So those are just a few reasons why. Of course, you could probably multitask maybe with high intensity cardio, but usually you're so in the hole and feeling not the best because it is a lot more exertion that you're probably not thinking about multitasking very much. Lower intensity doesn't burn as many calories per minute, right? So since we're not actively exerting ourselves as hard, we're not going to be burning as much energy. So the thing about this is that you can do it for a longer period of time. So even though higher intensity exercise may burn more calories, you can't do it as long. And we're actually going to talk in a sec about a potential issue with this exact reason. So it doesn't burn as many calories, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because you can do it longer over in the grand scheme of things. So you can do a 30-minute walk versus there's no way you're going to be able to do 30 minutes of sprinting, right? Even if you're resting, it's just too hard to do. Another great reason to do lower intensity forms of exercise is it might not beat up your joints quite as much. So if you're somebody who's dealing with some joint issues or just nagging pain, or you always find yourself hurting yourself when you do higher intensity forms of exercise, guess what? If you do this lower intensity, your joints are going to not get beat up as much, which is also going to make you not only just less painful in the immediate future, but you're going to enjoy exercise more because every time you come in, you're not going to be beating yourself up. And when we talk about long-term adherence towards exercise, that's going to be the biggest bang for our buck, and actually enjoying it and not going in thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm literally just going to be killing myself every single day. So when it comes to higher intensity exercise, of course, there are some good benefits from it, but there are also some downsides too. So it definitely takes a lot more willpower to get yourself to do a high intensity exercise routine. Because you just have to psych yourself up to get there, to go like, oh, I'm really going to hit this hard. Some people actually find, though, that it isn't as hard because they can tell themselves it's only going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be a really sucky 5 minutes. But once that 5 minutes is done, I'm done. A lot of people can't get to that level of kind of mental fortitude. So you'll kind of have to wager for yourself of what kind of individual exerciser you are. The other thing about higher intensity exercise, it takes longer to recover from. not just in the workout, but also day to day. So if you're thinking about in the workout, you might be able to do a really high intensity set of an exercise, like a 30-second sprint on a bike, but you'll have to rest for at least 1 to 2 minutes after that, likely, because you can't simply give it your all anymore. And then day to day, it's going to take longer to recover from, simply because it takes a lot on your central nervous system to actually do these higher intensity workouts. So when you're thinking about like, oh, I'm just going to do high intensity 5 minutes every single day, you might be running yourself a little dry, and you might start to notice a little fatigue, especially when you're first starting out. The thing about high intensity exercise, it does burn a lot of calories very, very quickly. And again, as we discussed with lower intensity, this is kind of like a push-pull, because you're not going to be able to do it as long. So you're burning more calories, but you're not going to be burning as many calories as long as versus when you do a lower intensity exercise, where you maybe aren't burning as many calories, but you can do it twice, 3 times, 4 times as long. Just something to consider overall for yourself when looking at exercise routines. Realistically, for best results, whatever gets you to stick with it and adhere to it long term is going to be your best option. Ideally, you're going to do a combination of both lower intensity and higher intensity exercise, because there are benefits from both of them. Higher intensity exercise can help to improve your VO2 max, which is basically your body's and your heart's ability to produce oxygen and blood flow to the max capacity to all the tissues in your body. That usually comes from higher intensity exercise. Lower intensity exercise can help with just general muscular endurance, which is obviously very, very important too. So lower intensity is usually for building a base, and then higher intensity is kind of building your peak of cardiovascular fitness. So both extremely important. In my workout routines, I do mostly low intensity. I do a lot of walking, a lot of light bike rides, and then 2 times a week roughly, I usually do an interval that's a little bit harder, just to kind of getting the best of both worlds there, to get those adaptations of both. Just realize too, lower intensity you can do more frequently. So if you are somebody who enjoys exercising basically every single day, you might be more hard pressed on doing more lower intensity forms of exercise, or potentially on your off days of your workouts, doing lower intensity exercise in that exact instance. So go ahead and give this video a like if you got some value and good tips from that for your overall cardiovascular routines, and maybe let me know down in the comments which form you like the best.